Hi guys! It's been a while. Feels like it's an interesting day. I don't know if it's interesting for any of y'all, but it's certainly interesting here. Just one of those like post new moon days. I feel like things always get a little more interesting. Instead of the days before, it's usually after, at least here. Anyway, so hi. Today we're going to be talking about kind of like breaking down the post launch stuff. And I always like to come back after a launch to look and see, what did I do that was different? What did I do that worked? What would I do differently? And what do I want to make sure that I'm super aware of so that I can do it again in the future? So instead of just keeping that to myself, I figure I'll do that live with y'all and you guys can ask questions. Hey, Shelly. Good morning. Hey, Fiora. Hey, Kelly. Hey, Toby. So you guys get the normal breakdown that I normally do behind the scenes, usually like in Trello or something. Okay. It is not automatically scrolling my comments, so I'm going to make sure that I keep doing that. So we're going to be talking about the launch for Spellbinding Sales. It was a pretty good launch. I am happy with it. It exceeded my original goals. So A, I'm going to break down why that's possible, but B, before we get too far in it, I want to be clear that yes, it's a $40,000 plus launch, but it's not necessarily like a huge amount of money. And I don't want you to look at that and be like, I feel like so often when people talk about numbers, it's to impress you so that you want to work with them. And I'm going to tell you quite frankly that one $40,000 launch a year is not enough to sustain your business, most likely, because if you break that up, you're only paying yourself $20,000. So this is a great way to start the year, but it's not me being like, this is all your business needs. And I want to make that very clear, especially if you have payment plans, like there's all sorts of things. And we can talk about why this is a great launch and why that is a good number to have, but I don't want you to, I don't have the right words today, and it's probably because there's all sorts of weird energy in the house, but I don't want you to have like all your focus on just that being the one thing, because the rest of your business structure and the business plan needs to sustain that and needs to be part of it. It can all go together. Hey, Pam. Okay, so I see some people hopping on. While I take a sip of water, can you all tell me what you think is necessary for a successful launch? Because I'm curious and I want to see how that correlates to what I did, because I love being the rebel and telling you don't have to do these things. But I'm going to take a drink now. So it is like oddly warm here today. I probably should have switched into short sleeves, but I was cold this morning. It's like 70. I don't know why all of a sudden this April is like already summer here, but it is. It's been 80, so that's cool. I'm gonna give you all a second in case anyone's typing. Yay, talking to people. Okay, talking to people might be necessary for a launch. I will admit that part. An open audience, so yes-ish. I'll talk about that some more. A launch plan layout. Okay. So those are all things that you feel like you guys need in order to have a successful launch. Let's see, are there more? Okay. I will say yes, you do need to talk to people, but I will say that a lot of the things doesn't have to be so cut and dry. So when we think about things that, I'm just going to lay it out to start off with, like things that I did not do. I didn't do any sort of Instagram or Facebook ads. I didn't message a ton of people. I know that I've seen launches where people are like, just message everybody you know and see if they want it. No, that's exhausting and that's kind of creepy. Like, no. I didn't send weekly emails. I didn't create a static launch plan. And that was kind of why I was like yes and no to Toby's, like, you need a launch plan or a layout. I like for there to be a structure, but I'll talk about this a little bit more later. For generators and mani-gens especially, it needs to be flexible so that you're responding to it and that your energy is actually engaging. So I didn't have the super rigid launch plan, which, if you guys know me, launch plans are kind of what I miss the most about corporate work, because we could have super rigid launch plans, and I could like have this masterpiece mapped out that was, you know, like a 6-week thing or an 8-week thing, and every little piece clicked together. And that was my thing. So when I say static, I mean like a very rigid launch plan that you completely stick to. And it needs to be more flexible and able to shift as you go into it. That's what I mean. Yes, you do need to understand who your ideal client is and have them around. That is necessary. So other things that I didn't do the standard 2-week push of like emails and posts and things. I didn't run a challenge. It's not to say that some of these things can't be done in an aligned manner. I'm just like, these are the things that I did not do. It's not to say I wouldn't do them in the future, but just so that we have that there as like the foundation. So now we'll go into what I did do. I did have a launch plan. I fully intended to not stick to it entirely. It was it's here, and we're going to see as we get closer if these things still feel like a response or if there are other things that I need to respond to around it. But it's at least like we have the timeline, we have an idea of how many lives I want to do and how many blogs I want to do and like what else feels good. But if it comes time to like write that email that I think sounds really cool, if I don't have a response around it, I'm just not doing it. And that was kind of the biggest thing for me, was like, I'm not going to push myself to do anything that my design doesn't want to do, because why would I launch against my human design? Why would I launch against my own energy? So that was the general idea of a launch plan. It was in Trello and like laid out nicely and whatever. I was present a bit more, so I was visible. I feel like I tend to come out of hermit season in January anyway, because I hermit from like end of October to December. So it may not have necessarily been too much more visible than I normally would be in January. It's just using that energy for a specific purpose rather than it just being like, hey, I'm here, I've come out of my hermit cave. I may go back in a month or two, but I'm out now. So there was that, and we'll have to see if that was actually like a thing. I messaged a few people personally based on their signifiers, but just as a like, hey, I feel like you're this person, let's connect. Not an even like I have expectations or intentions, just a, you're supposed to get something out of this, and maybe it's just me having this conversation with you so that you can become aware that your business wants something. Maybe you're going to get exactly what you need from us chatting, and that's all you need, and that's cool. So that was probably like 3 people, not a ton. I did have bonuses. I don't think they did anything in the logic kind of sense. I don't think anybody joined quickly because of a bonus ending. I don't think anybody joined that wouldn't have if the bonus wasn't there. I could be wrong. If somebody's on and they felt really attached to a bonus, you can let me know. But it was kind of looking back, I'm like, I don't think that actually did anything besides create extra work for me. Okay, so how did I decide when to contact people? It would be, we'll talk about this a little bit. Do I have cards nearby? So I would go through these are just random cards, but I'd go through my signifiers and just kind of like touch and like lay hands over and see who felt hot or who felt like there was some sort of magnetic pull, and pay attention to those people. And so if I had a name associated with that person, then it would be, okay, do I feel like I am supposed to take an action around this person and let myself or and then check with the pendulum to see like, should I contact this person and see if there's, something, maybe they just need an answer. One person, it was like very much after I spoke to them, I was like, okay, yeah, you just needed an answer to this one question, and that's all you need. You don't need to be working with me, and I'm going to suggest that you not if you ask, but I let intuition guide me and something outside of me, just so we don't confuse ourselves or sway the results, because you did. Okay, maybe I'm wrong about the bonuses then. Maybe Shelly can tell us some more about that. And the other thing that I really did was I pretty much had 3 focuses that everything was correlating to, And that was what I built the entire time around. It was kind of like if it's not related to one of these three things, my energy's in the wrong place and I shouldn't be doing it. So my three focuses we're going to talk about each one separately, but transformation pillars, connection, and energy. And I feel like it's my normal kind of protocol, but this time it was very much of I created the boundaries of not, especially as a Manny Gen, not getting distracted by the things I feel like I should be doing or the things that I would be doing if I was a giant corporation or the things that I have done for giant corporations, because just because something statistically works doesn't mean it's aligned with my energy or my business's energy. Especially my business's energy tends to always be a little bit like, I don't want to say weird, but she marches to her own drum and I can't control that. And it's probably because I do my own thing as well. So the two of us together are stubborn. Okay, so that makes sense. So having the bonus of calls and I assume probably the sales page audit did sway at least one person to join sooner rather than later. So, okay, I was slightly wrong. Good to know. If anybody else watches this later and wants to tell me whether I was right or wrong, I'll take it. Okay, so transformation pillars. That is where I would consider being super clear on who you're speaking to and how you can help them and why this is going to change them, potentially even like why this is different than other things they see, because there's a million things out there and there's a million people out there. So why are they going to resonate with you over those other people? And that's something that we have to be aware of when we are on this side of it so that we can help them and so that we can lead conversation and lead the energetic pathways rather than just kind of like waiting for people to stumble down them by themselves, because like, sorry, people do better when they have paths with guide rails rather than, I think of it, I always use the example of like bumpers on a bowling alley because I'm terrible at bowling. But you do better when you have something that's showing you the way and you can't go out of it. You can backtrack, but you can't go out of it, which, fun fact, I have hit myself with a bowling ball that I threw because it went behind me and I didn't realize it. Don't know how it's possible, but that's apparently possible. But knowing that, so for me, it was very much of, so I've run the program before. I've seen how it helped people. I've seen where I could make it better by noticing where months later they were still needing extra work there. And so I knew extra attention was going to make it better. And I could also get excited about, ooh, my computer's doing interesting things, which, as I have said, we have some spirit activity in the house today. So if you guys notice anything, just give a yell. One of my, I don't want to say goals, but one of my intentions for the year is getting very specific on mastery, because I am really passionate about how we facilitate and educate clients in a way where they can actually use the information that we're giving them and they can actually implement. So it's like integration and implementing rather than just throwing things at them and hoping that they're going to have a change from it or hoping that they're going to put stuff together to have results. It's not the way most people work. And I would love to see a change in this industry where that's how we build things and that's what we focus on so that we know our clients are going through transformation. So it was, again, like that, like, okay, I can tweak this program that I know works to include these aspects while also starting to educate them on how to do these things for their clients as well. So after brainstorming, I came up with 4 transformation pillars for spellbinding sales, and it was essentially attractions / client attraction. They kind of overlapped. Yeah, there's probably several people that want to say hi currently. There is someone that we know is here that's quite nice, and there is we'll be lighting a protection candle and doing some clearing later. We've already saged, but that's not strong enough. Not sure what the other energy is, but it's there. That's what happens when you live with me, apparently. Anyway, so the other pillars were, or transformation pillars were, selling, obviously, and there's a lot that you can throw into that. Energy, and to me, energy included, you know, both the background of how we approach things, and included the human design. It would include like ritual, those aspects, and then strategy was the last transformation pillar. And so every single thing that I did was linked to one of those things. And I see those as, if you're in my community and you're paying attention, if you want to hop on one of those paths, let's say you're really interested in client attraction, or you're really interested in selling, you're interested in human design or energy or ritual, you're interested in strategy, you can hop on one of those paths, and if it's aligned, write it all the way down to the program and know that it's going to be a good fit, rather than like catching things here and there and, you know, just kind of hopping around and seeing if you get directed somewhere at the end. It's like a, no, if I know everything that I'm talking about is linked to one of these 4 things, if you hopped on that, like that energetic path, you're going to keep looking for the next thing that's related. And maybe you get enough along the way and that's all you need, and that's cool. If you need more, you're going to end up where you're supposed to be. And it's just giving a little bit more direction when we launch, because a lot of times, I mean, I know it, I've seen it, we tend to just think about, you know, what are ways that we can show people a preview of what we're doing, or what are things that we can talk about that are slightly tangible or, you know, tangentially related. But instead it's a, what if we pull out the actual ways people will be transformed by this and start speaking to each of them, so that they can see that coming up to that, and they can explore what that change would look like and what that transformation would feel like. Like they can start getting on that energetic journey, and, you know, even start making some of those changes and letting their vibration match your program, rather than just trying to shove everybody in. Because it's a whole lot easier when people are on the same page as you and when they understand what they're going to be getting. I just like to make business easy. The thing I always say is that I am lazy. I don't want to do the most like work if I don't have to. If I can let the energy do the work for me, that's entirely what I want to do, because that's what it's here for. Why would we work against it? I feel like somebody has a question, so if you have it, ask while I take a sip of water. And I probably don't drink slow enough for you to actually type a question, so we'll just see. Am I gonna run over a puppy? No. I have both the puppies in here because I feel like they're gonna bark with all of the energy going on in the house. So I'm trying not to roll over puppy paws. Okay, and so my next focus was connection. And actually, I think some of the people may be here from that. But one of the things that I always kind of hated about what people were telling me to do and how I interact with people is there's always that like, oh, you're giving too much away, or, you know, you shouldn't do that until they work with you. Hi, Stormy. And that just doesn't feel good to me. And yes, like, of course, we have to have boundaries and we have to know what we're comfortable with and what we're not. But for me, it was instead of getting concerned or in that place of fear, lack, whatever, about how much I was giving and how much time I was spending with people, or how much, you know, was going into personal conversations, it was I just want to connect with people. And if that connection leads us to the program, great. If not, I've had some really fucking cool conversations with people, and hopefully I've helped them get clarity. And so I just opened myself up to conversations, and it was, again, no expectations, no intentions, but very much of, I just want to know where your business is, where you want it to go, and feel into that energy around it. A lot of people I talked to had a lot of clarity around it. And so it's like, let me show you what I think is possible. Doesn't mean you have to work with me, but I can give you that little taste of clarity. You might not be ready to take action on that clarity yet. That's fine. It might need to simmer. It might need to marinate. Your business may need you to do something else first, but you at least have that like stepping stone to where you're supposed to go. And if it was somebody who was aligned, in that conversation, I could usually tell if they were one of my signifiers up on my client board and feel into that a little bit more. They, in general, I think everybody kind of knew whether they were supposed to be there or not. And it was okay, I'll just come on in. I actually kind of found that I liked these a whole lot more when it was around the expectation of no expectations and no intentions. At some point over the summer, once my schedule kind of mellows out a little bit, I'm just going to open up to community connection calls, because it was so much fun just to have these conversations where people are telling me what's going on in their business, and I could tap in without it being like oh, she's trying to sell to me, or without it being like oh, this person just wants free advice. It was like a completely cool conversation on both sides of just, your business is here and wants to hear whatever I'm saying, or it wants to speak to me. Let's see what's going on. Let's see from both of our aspects. Something that I did think was really cool, in fact, I like screenshotted every time somebody told me this, and it went into like my things to look at when Kristen is sad. Which, if you don't have one of those, you should like make a Trello board, or like have a folder on your computer where you screenshot all the lovely things people say about you. So if you need that little pickup, it's there. But something that actually surprised me was several people mentioned that I actually gave them more attention and spent more time with them figuring out where their business is and where it wants to be than, mentors they were already paying. Which to me is bonkers, because if you're paying somebody, they should be exploring that with you. But also usually people say we can't figure this out until we're working together. And for me, that doesn't feel good, because how do I know if I can help you if I don't know where you're trying to get to? I don't. And there's a little bit of ethics problems with that. How can somebody guide you if they have no idea where the fuck you're trying to go? They have no idea what your business wants, where you're supposed to be going, what's going wrong already. Because if somebody comes to me and if what's going wrong in their business is solely mindset, no, I'm just going to send you to a mindset coach, because yeah, I can do a little bit, we could do a few things, but why wouldn't you just go to somebody who focuses on that and then see about working with your human design, or working with ritual, or working with strategy? Because you need that one thing targeted first. And I feel like as a mentor, it is our responsibility to really decipher, what is that true thing that somebody needs? Is it us? It might not be. And just because it's not us in that moment doesn't mean that it's not going to be us in the next moment. There's that piece of just trusting that when we serve people, it's all going to happen in the right way, as long as we're truly focusing on serving them and not filling our bank account solely. Because you can fill your bank account and serve people at the same time. It doesn't have to be a one or the other. And yeah, it just doesn't. That's something that makes me a little heated these days. I think some of y'all know. Okay, and the third thing that I focused on was, of course, energy, because I'm me. Of course we expect that. I've already mentioned this before, but really making sure I was working with my design. Most of us are taught to work as manifestors, and even a lot of the strategy around businesses and launches that you may see are geared for manifestors. And on a team, it can be on a big team, it can be a little different, because there's enough energy there where you can sort of work with it. Also depends on the energy of the business. A lot of my corporate work was very much driven the way a manifestor would be, which is why I left corporate work. But it's let's make sure I don't fall back into old patterns. And I love launches. I love launch plans. They make me so happy. I would be entirely happy doing that all the time. I don't do it as much anymore, luckily, but I used to even freaking channel launch plans for people. Sometimes they would be my clients, and sometimes I'd be like, there's a person who's redoing a program around this topic, and this is the launch plan that I have channeled for them, and I'd have to go find the person. However, when we have these launch plans that are very much we do these things on these dates and that's the only way that it goes. It doesn't actually work if you're a mani-gen or a generator. It doesn't really work if you're a projector. If you're a manifester, sort of works, but sort of not, because you also still need the flexibility to go with whatever you're inspired by. Luckily, it works a little bit more for you. But in general, most of us need that flexibility so that we can continue to bring our energy into it as well as the energy of who's around us. So for mani-gens and generators, we need that flexibility to respond and be passionate about it. So what actually worked better for me than having like this, we're going to post this thing here and this thing on this day, and we're going to talk about this on this day, was I created like a separate Trello board where for each transformation pillar, it was like, let me brainstorm all the things that I could talk about. And then instead of having a set thing that I'm going to talk about, I'm just going to know, like, I'm talking about this transformation pillar on, this date, and I can come back and see whatever I've responded to. And maybe it's watching somebody get really stuck and I'm speaking to it in that way. Maybe it's from seeing somebody do something that isn't really aligned with them. Maybe it's just like when I reread a topic that I've written down, I'm like, oh yeah, I have a lot to say about that. But allowing for there to be that natural response as opposed to trying to plan a response, because planning a response doesn't work. Like simply said, it doesn't work. And if we allow for the response to be more organic, I suppose, then people are actually going to connect to what we're saying. And it doesn't mean that you can't like pre-plan content or any of that, because you could still pre-write content and then just come to it with do I feel like this is coming from a response right now, or do I feel like this is just like words that are here? And if it feels just like words, don't post it. Like that simple. Or don't talk about it that day. That simple. Come back to it after you've had a response, and maybe that means tweaking it a little. Maybe that just means having another response around the same thing and using it. But creating your plan and your strategy with that aspect in mind, rather than making it in order to get to success, I have to do these things on these days at this timeline, or I'm never going to get there. Because, hey, guess what? You're probably not going to get there because you're going to be burned out and exhausted and frustrated and bitter. And nobody wants to work with you when your energy is that. That's just going to be pushing people away. So instead, that was one of my big focuses, like personally, was I need to be working with my design. Energy-wise, I also use signifiers, which I always do, and really trusting in that a little bit more. I always set not always, but from experience, I set the intention that signifiers come in at the highest vibration. So just feeling into that and trusting who comes in around that, and trusting that if it's very clear, no, that person who is talking to me doesn't fit a signifier, they're not supposed to be in the program, even if they want to be in it. And that's fine. I think it's very fair to tell people that they aren't an energetic fit for it at the moment and redirect them to what is. And so in some of those cases, it was, I actually think you need to work on this first. In some cases, it feels like your business wants you to do this thing, or to, sit back and re-look at this aspect. And some cases it was like not sure, but this is not the program for you, and that's okay. Again, we are leading people, which doesn't mean just leading them into our bank accounts. It means leading them into what's right for them and what is the best fit for them. If you are uncertain that somebody is going to have a positive transformation with you, you shouldn't be working with them. It's that simple. So, I have the signifiers there over there. I had my client board, which again is a very consistent thing. I did do something kind of different with it. So I brought in, I don't know if she's here right now, I brought in Shelby Melissa, I'll drop her information later because she was a pretty essential part of this launch. I brought her in to do Reiki for my business and for the launch. We tend to need more support and self-care during launch season or launch periods because we're stretching ourselves out and connecting to lots of people. We're also doing lots of things. And instead of me trying to, plan all the things and write all the things and outline all the things and design all the graphics because my graphic designer was gone and do all of that, plus connect to all the people, plus, tap into all the signifiers and see if I could clarify who they were, plus hold space, plus clear all the things. No, I could just bring in more support. So all of that wasn't coming out of my energy. If that was solely coming out of my energy, there's no way we would have hit this, these points, because my energy alone would not have been enough to sustain it. So I brought in Shelby and had her do Reiki to the business, Reiki to the launch, and we worked with the signifiers and with my client board to really attract in who was aligned. And some of the things would be making them recognize if it was right for them. So again, no manipulation, but making them recognize if something was right for them. Leading them to the sales page so they could check it out. That type of energetic work. Clearing the pathway so that, if they walked down it and they had resistance, if the resistance wanted to leave, it could. Clearing just space so that there was more room in my business for me to receive, which at one point we actually did get stuck. And it was kind of I don't know if I have space for all of this. So she goes, okay, well, let's open you up so you can receive more. And I'm like, okay, let's try it out. And then the next week we had several people come in. And it was okay, that clearly worked. Let's do that again. And we got to the point where it was very clear that the Spellbinding Sales, the program, could have held more, but I couldn't hold more without trying to bring in more team or structuring it differently. Next time, we'll talk about this when we talk about what I'll change next time, but next time there will be some slight differences in structure so that I can expand a little more without it being too draining. Yeah, so if you were drawn in and drawn to Shelby, that could be why, because we have that, she Reiki'd my sales page. She Reiki'd the actual word Spellbinding Sales. So we did a lot of the energetic work. If it was right for you, you were going to feel some sort of tug. You were going to feel some sort of awareness. You were not just going to miss the program entirely, and you still have free will. You can do whatever you want. It still may not be the right time for you, and we could talk about that. But that was let's at least bring you to the waiting room for the program. It's in the Soul of My Business, there's a waiting room where you sit to go in different programs. Let's at least get you in the waiting room so you can feel the energy out. You can tell what's going on. And if it's aligned, come claim your spot. And I'm not going to say what type of spot it is because it's different for every program. I think Spellbinding Sales was cabanas at one point. And I was okay, that's a little strange, but okay. I don't think there's a difference between having it being done in person versus online Reiki, that is. So I've had it done in person for healing, and I admittedly don't always feel it. If it's associated with acupuncture and crystals, yeah, I'll feel something, but okay, you're doing 3 types of energetic work on me, of course I'll feel it. I can feel a difference. I tend to have my when my house cleaner comes, she hasn't been in a while. When she comes, she tends to Reiki the house, and I can feel a difference in vibration. But that's really about it. With working with Shelby virtually, I liked that I could have checks to know that this was working, because I just it's me, I'm skeptical. So I just went and tell her things, and she'd be okay, this is what I see in the soul of your business. And I'd be oh yeah, I forgot to tell you that, because I'm used to being this quadruple Scorpio that doesn't tell people things. Yes, by the way, the soul of my business has completely changed design. Glad you picked that up. And I could feel when things would shift, just like when things were shifting inside the program because she was doing it. And that was interesting to feel it without me doing any sort of energy work around it. Where it's like I could just be sitting here and I'll be like, oh, okay, something's happening. And if we weren't on a call together, I would come back and get her Vox later, where it'd be like, okay, this is what I changed, this is what happened, or this is what I did. And I could correlate it with, oh, that's what I was feeling. One of the times I was actually on the acupuncture table while she was doing it, and I get the Vox later, like I could feel something like third eye-ish, and I had a needle in. So I was like, is it just the needle? I'm not sure. And her Vox was like, something felt a little sharp or stuck in your third eye. So I did some clearing there, and I'm like, that would have been whatever was clearing through the acupuncture needle. And that's what I felt at the same time. So that was cool. I hope that answers your question. So I don't think there's necessarily a difference. I felt pretty darn happy with the way it worked. Believe in my notes after launch was, I'm never doing a launch without Shelby again, because whoo, that was so much work that I didn't have to do. And yeah, why wouldn't I bring a freaking Reiki master in to do it for me? It was this like, oh, yes, well, I'm known for energy. I don't have to hold all the energy myself. And it's okay to trust somebody to come in there and to do the energy work with me so that I don't need to be there. It was great confirmation. And I did do some ritual. Again, like ritual is something that, as long as it means something to you, it means something. I didn't do anything like super structured or, like proper formal. It was just like little rituals that I would do to raise energy and to direct it like towards my client board or towards the pyramid that I put all the signifiers in. So that was kind of that. And then I think we kind of already talked about it, but self-care links into this. And self-care was one of the things that, I don't know if she's here, but somebody asked about, like, how did you manage self-care while you're going through this? And my launch actually got longer than I intended for it to be, because I was spending so much time really digging in with people. And it got to a point where I was like, either there's like 10 people that I don't respond to, or I try to rush them through this process of figuring out where they are and where their business is, or we extend the launch. And it worked out perfectly, because the date the ladies chose in the group was later, and it was like, well, instead of closing the doors earlier, I'll just use that extra time as part of launch. It's probably like next time I'll just know to make it a little bit longer so that I have time for those conversations, because they do take up a lot of time. And I also need to make sure that I have the energy to go through all of those conversations. So with self-care, the big thing was creating boundaries and creating my non-negotiables. As I mentioned earlier, during a launch, you tend to get a little more scattered, a little more thin. It is the most necessary to have self-care. Even if I am really shitty about self-care at other periods of my life, which sometimes I am, that is the time that I'm like, it's got to be here or I'm not going to be able to receive. If you don't have the energy to follow your design, to, even do the connection work and do the attraction work, how are you going to have the energy to receive? You're not. It's going to be going just sustaining you. And we're doing this so we can receive and so we can serve. Let's make sure we have the energy for it. So it was, again, like making sure I personally, making sure I had my acupuncture appointments, making sure that everybody in the house was supporting me, because it was like sorry guys, I'm just not getting the fucking dishwasher. Like, that's not happening. And at this point in time, my husband was in, I think, all of his cast. So he was in the leg cast and the arm cast and the special crutches, and like, he wasn't able to do anything. So it was like I'm kind of doing everything around the house, and I've got to figure out a way to not, because I can't take care of him, a toddler, the house, a business, my existing clients, and a launch all at once. Like, that's just not going to happen. So it was a big catalyst around how can I support myself more and how can I receive more in general. I did have I had already had my kind of, I don't know if I would consider her a health coach per se, but for lack of better words, we're going to call her a health coach, and made sure she was holding me accountable to, I know I'm really busy, but I still need to have at least 2 to 3 check-ins of some type of healing movement during these times, so that I is making sure to use oils and whatnot, but also having my kind of non-negotiables of what I won't do. So it was if something's not done, I'm not staying up to 3 in the morning to get it done. If I happen to be awake at 3 in the morning and it feels good to do it, cool. But I'm not going to overexhaust myself to write an email or write a post or plan out of something. It was just a straight up like, nope, if it's not done at 5, it may not get done, and that's okay. And at some points, I will admit that piece is a little scary for me because I like to control things. And my background has been running things like a manifestor in business, and those tendencies come out when we get in launch season. And it was like, hey, this feels uncomfortable, but I know it's what I have to do. Let's just check in with my sacral to make sure it's right. And it was. So just ignoring it. And there were times, of course, where I was working on things in the middle of the night because I like working on things in the middle of the night. It's quiet and there's no distractions and everyone's asleep, so there's less energy in the world and I can channel easily. But it was my choice rather than it being like I've got to do this in order to make the money, or I've got to do this in order to sustain myself. It was just okay, we're good. If I want to do this, it gets done. You're also a manifester, so it's like you do things differently. But I think that is something where a lot of us struggle with. It's like we have this idea, and that's why I talked about like not having the super structured launch plan, because previously, even when I was, making sure that I was including energy and whatnot into my launches, it was I said I was going to, in my plan, I said I was going to post this, and this on these days. So that means I have to stay up to write the thing to make sure that I actually do what my launch plan says. And that was what I was like, nope, I'm not doing that right now because there's no way that I can in a healthy manner. So I also used kind of piggybacked off of that and built in, I guess, like mandatory self-care / playtime into my weeks. And so it was like, making sure that I don't skip my morning and evening sort of meditations, like more like chakra cleansing, making sure that I was using oils properly, making sure that I was having time for tapping and movement and all of my appointments. We got the Pokemon game for the Nintendo Switch. So it was like, okay, let's play that with, I was going to say with my toddler, but he's not actually really good at playing it, so it's playing it with my husband. Soren can play Smash Brothers now, so that's something. But just making sure that I had that playtime in there so that my energy could clear and get to a higher place rather than that place of like, I've got to do all the things and I have to do all the things in order to get to where I want to get to, because that's not true. And that's actually what holds us back from getting to where we want to get to. The next kind of thing that I did would be celebrating my wins. And I'm always pretty good about this, but making sure that I was like, okay, we're celebrating each person coming in. And usually that's with tequila, if you know me, that's my ritual. Didn't make my husband do it this time with me because we also had to cut back. Because I'm like, I'm not taking a shot for each person when it's this many people. Sorry, guys, I don't need to become a lush. But taking sips of tequila. And then I let my husband take up some of the space there, and he typically surprises me. So he came back with like boom boom wine because he was like, your launch has gone boom boom. So I was like, okay. Okay. That was the best dad joke ever, but all right. But making sure that I am celebrating the win so we can anchor in the success of what we're getting rather than just being like, oh, well, we need more, because then the energy wavers and we want it to build off of where we are rather than going like back and forth and getting kind of stuck and plateauing, especially for Manny Gens and generators. We don't want to. Hey, Shelby, we talked about you a lot already. And actually, we're going to talk about you again. It's a perfect point. And so around self-care, we already talked about this some, but the biggest thing was making sure that I was supported, allowing other people to carry various parts of my weight. So, or parts of the business's weight or the launch's weight. And so like at the house, that was having our nanny do a little bit more and realizing that I don't need to control the things. She is perfectly capable of loading a dishwasher and like helping in the kitchen. She is perfectly capable of putting the dogs outside in the morning and feeding the fish and whatnot. I don't need to do all the things. Like, I just don't. And making sure that my team was supporting me. So I purposely didn't look at any of the technical stuff because if I do, I'm gonna go down that rabbit hole and we don't need to. Like, that was not somewhere my energy needed to go. My energy needed to go to connecting with people and making sure that I was tapping into what my business wanted me to speak about. Didn't need to go to the technical stuff, so let Ardelia cover all of that and oversee and just kind of keep a track on like, this timeline is coming up. Are we where we're supposed to be with everything that's put into motion? Do you need to, reach back out to this person and, letting her handle all of the client onboarding so that, again, like, didn't have to handle it. It was just a, like, let me send you a message and let you know where somebody came in and you can deliver the contracts and make sure their payments are set up properly. Put them on the client calendar so that we can keep track of them. Like, all of those things just so that I didn't have to be the person actually doing it. No Manny Jenning. We don't need me Manny Jenning during launch because then we won't have the energy for any of the things. And then Shelby was doing the business Reiki so that it wasn't me trying to do all the things and do all of the energetic work as well so that we could clear it out. We could clear the business, especially because it's kind of like, I feel like I want to quote a Janet Jackson song, but I'm not going to quote Janet Jackson, but if you guys, you can go hunt her down later if you want to know what I'm talking about. But it's the, when you have a bright light and the bugs come to it. It's that when you're shining bright, making sure that there's not anything drawn to it that isn't necessarily the best vibration for you or the best energy for you. Clearing that out. It was actually one of the things that I found the most helpful was having her do double checks with signifiers to be like, is that the right energy of the person? Because sometimes my blinders are on, and especially if I know somebody and I'm like, oh yeah, they totally fit this energy, but the signifier could be what they're actually supposed to become rather than what they already are. And there was occasion or two where I had somebody pegged and she would look and be like, yeah, it's actually not quite right. And we would switch the person to a different signifier and then they'd come in and I'd be like, oh, okay, blinders on. I didn't have to do that work of like going into the soul of my business and trying to figure out who matched what, especially if I already knew like if somebody was showing up in the soul of my business and I knew they were in the program, I just needed to figure out what energy matched them and what they were going to be working on besides what they were telling me, because the signifier tells me other things. So it was lovely to have somebody doing that, like, okay, yes, there is that. Or like, these signifiers feel like they're really close. If you know who they are, what do you want to do about that? Can you check in to see if you're supposed to speak to them, if you're supposed to take action, if you are supposed to respond to them in some sort of way? Or is it if you know them or if you don't know them, is there something you're supposed to speak about that's going to generate a response in them? And when we accidentally had way too many signifiers, or not way too many, but somehow we had two sets that got pulled, And I couldn't remember why there were 2 sets, but it was certainly my max number, but I couldn't remember why they were separated. And it was like I am not tapping into 30 something people and trying to find spaces for each and every one. Like, I can't do that work. That is exhausting. It was lovely to have somebody else feeling into like, okay, these ones are the ones that feel like they need the most attention. Let's figure out who they are, or let's get them in. And then let's see where everything waves off. And again, like, she's not aware of the conversations I'm having with people, and she'd come back and be like, oh, so when I go through the check of all the signifiers, this one feels like they are, in this emotion, or this one feels like they're stuck here. And it would confirm things that they're telling me, and it would confirm, my feelings of what was right for them and what they needed to focus on. So it both helped me attract them in and helped me bring them into the program, but also helped me get clear on how I was going to serve those individual people without having to limit my energy by doing that. So what I would do, there were so many signifiers. Oh, life is interesting. One of these days I'll try to remember like why they got split in 2, because it was like, why are there 36 signifiers and why are they in 2 different pyramids? Don't know. Things Kristen does and forgets. So things I would do differently. This is kind of where I'll probably still come up with things later, and I've been where I'm reflecting, because the program is going to open again in the fall, and it's like, what do I want to be the same? What do I want to be different for that launch? So I may bring in more support, because I feel like, especially if we are potentially opening it up to more people, I know I'm going to cap it, but I might cap it at a little higher. If we're potentially opening it up to more people, then I want to make sure that I am supported. I don't necessarily know what that support would be at the moment, but it's just being aware that that could be there. Like, people have suggested having more support in conversations, but I really like having that touch point so that I could be 100% sure whether something was aligned for the person, and so I could be really clear where their business wanted to go. You could have an application form to play with that, but like, again, I don't really like that, because I feel like most people came in after having an actual conversation with me, whether it was like through Messenger, through Vox, through a entryway call, like a human design call, or through, just some sort of like one-to-one connection. So I think it's more of just me being aware that people need that connection from me and need that openness, which quadruple Scorpio, openness may not always be my go-to. So being aware of that. Yeah, Pam, I am open to hearing those ideas. And knowing my transformation pillars, probably having more ideas of things that I could speak about. And I may even prep some of the content in advance for the next time. And again, just having it flexible and knowing that even if I have the foundation of whatever I'm going to talk about or whatever I'm going to post there, it's likely going to change as I start getting into it and as I get another response, and just allowing that to be, and that's okay. I know I'm going to be structuring the course a little differently, or the program a little differently next time, and spacing out when people start their first few lessons and having it kind of like in waves. While it's a set space, it'll be in waves of when you do your first lesson. So it's not like I'm going through everybody's most extensive pieces of homework at the same time, because that was definitely a limit of like where Shelby could feel, hey, like the program can fit more, but I was like, no, I'm tapped out. Like, there's no way that my energy can support more, even if you open me up. There's just no way. And if that was spaced out, then I could feel better, because my big concern was like, I don't want to not be serving or not be providing information. And I tend to have guilt about, like, if I get sick and I get behind looking at things, I'm like, oh no, I am not helping them. And it's just like totally my own thing. But being very clear on that. Okay, So if you guys have questions about the launch, about anything, would love to hear them. If you're watching on the replay, you can tag me. I'm actually going to be writing a blog post kind of talking about the, I don't want to say like evolution, but for lack of a better word at the moment, we're going to say like the evolution of the program and like the structure and all of the things so that we can track it as it goes and so that you can see why I've made some of the choices that I have made and what will be changing in like my mindset behind that. You can be on the lookout for that whenever the website revamp goes live. Pro tip, don't do the Kristen and try to revamp your website during Mercury retrograde shadow, because it definitely went from like, it'll be done here to like, we have to wait for a developer to come look at this. It'll be done whenever the developer looks at it and whenever Kristen writes other pages because she hasn't had time. I will drop also, I'll tag Ardelia and I'll drop Shelby's information in here in case you want to speak to either of them. If you have questions, feel free to tag me. I don't see any instantly, so I'm gonna head off, but I will come back to answer questions. Alrighty, bye!